when those pockets turn, when they get to those extremities like we see now, they tend to be pretty fruitful, and that's one of the reasons that, I'm pretty constructive as we look forward.
So you hit upon something that I want to address because I'm intrigued by the concept. You mentioned as a contrarian, you're constantly looking for things the crowd has overlooked. But one of the things we tend to notice over longer market cycles is that the crowd tends to be right much of the time. It's at those major turning points where the crowd completely loses their minds and gets it totally wrong. But what are the challenges of being a contrarian when you're leaning into the wind and, it's an uphill battle most of the time? How do you manage around that?
Yeah, so I think you're exactly right, and I would just observe that now is one of those times that all of those behavioral characteristics are in play. The chorus is calling for it's dead, it's over. I still believe in cycles. The price and valuation still matter. I still believe in price and valuation, not as a timing mechanism, but fundamentally. I believe it's unlikely and unsustainable that returns will continue to compound at 15 to 20%. I don't see any reason why structurally it should change or shift from kind of the long-term cross-cycle returns of 7 to 8%. Yet, the popular chorus is on the other side of that. And so all of the behavioral elements are in play today. And in terms of how you manage it, I think it starts with yourself as an individual, as a decision maker. I think one of the most difficult things in this business is knowing yourself and managing yourself, particularly in those situations when you're underperforming in a position or in a portfolio and you look wrong and other people are telling you you're wrong. Clients might be heckling you and telling you are wrong. And how do you make decisions in that situation is one of the most important characteristics of what we do. And then the other side of it is, you want to try to put in place things that allow you to stay true to your process. And that gets to the elements that I was touching on a little bit in terms of the kind of people you put in your team, the kind of culture that you create, how you manage your day-to-day, what you look at, and importantly, the kind of clients that you have. What expectations do they have for you? And then lastly, your own ownership structure, and I touched on that a little bit. Those are all things that you can try to put in place structurally to allow you to be in a position to make the best decisions when behaviorally it's most difficult.
Let's stick with the bottoms-up stock picking, because a lot of what we're discussing is very much the macro environment. You mentioned monetary policy. We talked about COVID. There are so many broad macro issues. How do you guys think about the macro situation? It seems unavoidable, at least in 2020. Is macro part of your process if you're a bottoms-up stock picker, or do you have to try not to think about what's going on in the broader sense?
Yeah, the short answer is you have to, right? We're bottoms-up fundamental stock pickers. We're owning businesses and their cash flows. That being said, you have to have an eye to the context that you're in. I think one of the things very clear going back to 2007, 2008, the value tribe got crushed buying financials at increasingly lower price-to-book multiples into a macro environment that was not conducive. And I think if you were only looking at the company and didn't have construct for the context, you got punished. And we were not immune to that, to be clear. But there's an important lesson in there in that you have to have an eye to the context. We don't have strategists in-house. We don't have economists. We're not making forecasts on GDP or anything of that nature, which we don't believe in. But you do have to have a construct of the environment in which you're in. What I say to the team is, you can have a great house in a bad neighborhood, and it doesn't matter how good that house is if you're in a bad neighborhood. And so you have to understand what neighborhood you're in. And a specific example for me where I've gotten really, penalized is, had a very stock-specific thesis in an oil and gas company, U.S. oil and gas company called Apache. It was stock-specific and idiosyncratic that I really believed in. And a number of those elements have played out, but it's in the context of an energy space. And if WTI is at 90 versus 30, it doesn't matter what the company's specific idiosyncratic factors are. You have to have a view of the context. That's a very specific example, but I think it covers across the board, and I think that's how we as teams, how we interrogate and think to make sure that we have an eye to the context.
We were just discussing the exact same thing with, despite for the past 4 years having the most pro-coal president in history, it didn't matter which coal company you owned. The question was it ugly or uglier? So I totally get even a good house in a bad neighborhood isn't going to help you. But sticking with the macro issue, you mentioned monetary policy and you also mentioned valuation. Let's tie all three of those together. How responsible is today's effectively zero interest rate, lower for longer policy affecting today's relatively high historical valuations?
I mean, I can't quantify it empirically, Barry, but when your risk-free rate is zero, and arguably your real rate is negative, that will influence, in a non-trivial way, how you price cash flow streams. And we've seen that. And to the point on context, I think one of the things I've been more critical of myself is not being more fully cognizant of that as the environment, to my analogy before, the neighborhood over the past decade. And so it's been a meaningful driver. The more interesting question as investors is, where are we today and what does the future look like from where we sit today? And I try to spend more time thinking about that.
Thanks, Adam, for being so generous with your time. We have been speaking with Adam Carr. He is the head of Orbis US and portfolio manager at the $37 billion Orbis Investment International firm. If you enjoy this conversation, well, be sure and check out any of our previous 390 or so such interviews that we've had over the past 6 years? Oh my goodness, that's a long time. You can find that at iTunes, Spotify, wherever you feed your podcast fix. We love your comments, feedback, and suggestions. Write to us at mibpodcast@bloomberg.net. Give us a review on Apple iTunes. You can sign up for my daily reads at ritholtz.com. They're free. They'll show up in your mailbox every day at 7 a.m. Check out my weekly column at bloomberg.com/opinion. Follow me on Twitter at ritholtz. I would be remiss if I did not thank the crack staff that helps put these conversations together each week. Marufal is my audio engineer. Michael Boyle is my producer. Atika Valbron is our project manager. Michael Batnick is my head of research. I'm Barry Ritholtz. You've been listening to Masters in Business on Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, y'all.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Oh, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
It's the persistent interviewer who gets you exactly what you need.
Where are they going to act if and when they get inflation to rise?
Count on these three to ask that one last question.
How divided is this FOMC right now?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Ferro, and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are people too optimistic about that neat ending this time?
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. And now watch us on Bloomberg Television.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population. How do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers? Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
More than 2 million people worldwide have died from the coronavirus. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University confirmed the death toll Friday. COVID-19 is the 9th most fatal pandemic in history and the 3rd deadliest in the past 100 years or so. At least 40 million died during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. San Francisco plans to open 3 large vaccination sites. The city's mayor, London Breed, on Friday said they will launch a website where residents can receive notifications that say when they can get vaccinated. The sites are scheduled to open sometime next week. The city's also making plans to offer COVID-19 shots in community clinics and pop-up sites. The city of Omaha could soon receive $40 to $50 million in federal relief for people needing help paying their rent and utilities. Mayor Gene Stother's office says the money is expected to come from the $900 billion coronavirus relief bill passed by the U.S. Congress last month. Up to 25,000 National Guard troops are headed to D.C. ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration on Wednesday. Brian Shook with more.
Pentagon officials have steadily increased the number of soldiers being made available to beef up security following the deadly January 6th attack on the Capitol. A Guard spokesman said their mission will be to support federal law enforcement and protect the nation's capital. The Secret Service is leading security preparations for the inauguration on Wednesday.
The Ravens and Bills meet tonight in a divisional matchup. Joel Stern has more.
The Baltimore Ravens come off a 7-point wild card win over Tennessee last weekend. The Bills defeated the Colts 27-24, their first playoff win since 1995. Buffalo quarterback Josh Allen says they can't make things easy for the Ravens.
It's one of those games where you got to capitalize on your opportunities to score.
The winner will advance to the AFC Championship game.
The Mega Millions jackpot continues to roll. No one matched all 6 numbers in last night's drawing, so the jackpot soars to an estimated $850 million for Tuesday night's drawing. Tonight's Powerball is worth $640 million. I'm Lisa Taylor. Senator Chuck Schumer says the new Senate Democratic majority is ready to deliver the bold change America demands. In the weekly Democratic address, the New York lawmaker insisted they'll help provide more coronavirus relief as soon as President-elect Joe Biden is sworn in.
We also must help the Biden-Harris administration, and so the Senate will work to quickly confirm the president-elect's highly qualified cabinet, as well as his judicial and executive nominations.
Schumer added they'll be working on climate change, health care, and the second impeachment of President Trump. The Sacramento branch of the FBI is preparing for potential violence related to the recent unrest in Washington, D.C. and the upcoming inauguration. Special Agent in charge Sean Reagan says specialists are ready to respond to potential threats and help with investigations.
We are getting tips and leads from both our headquarters, from other field offices around the country as to what they're picking up on, what they're hearing that might indicate that there's any type of violence planned or criminal activity planned.
Sacramento District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert has issued a warning that anyone involved in criminal behavior in the city or at the state capitol will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The Texas Capitol is closed. The grounds will be off limits today through Wednesday amid the FBI warnings of armed protests at every state capitol ahead of the inauguration. There will be a high law enforcement presence in the area with added police and Department of Public Safety personnel. Vice President Mike Pence is celebrating the accomplishments of late American pilot Chuck Yeager. Pence delivered remarks at a memorial for Yeager in Charleston, West Virginia, Friday, where he praised him for making history.
Chuck Yeager got into the cockpit of the glamorous Glennis and became the first human being ever to break the sound.
In addition to his historic accomplishment, Yeager is also known for being the head of the Air Force Aerospace Research Pilot School, where he trained pilots who would later become astronauts. Chuck Yeager died in December at 97 years old. I'm Lisa Taylor.
And I'm Susanna Palmer in the Bloomberg Newsroom. New York City will run out of COVID-19 vaccine doses in a matter of days. That according to Mayor Bill de Blasio on Friday. Governor Andrew Cuomo also called for more vaccines from the federal government while criticizing the city for not effectively distributing the doses it has. On Friday, he said the city has only used about 60% of its supply, while the state has not administered about a quarter of the doses it has received. All levels of law enforcement are bracing for protests at the state capitol in Albany starting this weekend and running into the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden next week. For now, law enforcement officials say there are no credible threats against the state capitol, but they remain on high alert. As we've been reporting, the National Rifle Association of America, the gun rights group feared for its lobbying clout, but now threatened with dissolution by the state of New York, filed Friday for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, this with plans to regroup in Texas. American automakers represented by the American Automotive Policy Council, a lobbyist, are asking the U.S. government to help solve a debilitating shortage of computer chips that's closing auto factories worldwide and could restrict production until the fall. Home builders are busy, but even with millions out of work because of the pandemic, the construction industry has hundreds of thousands of unfilled jobs. The story on that from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
A survey by the National Association of Home Builders found that builders' top concern is labor, with 85% expecting future cost and availability problems, up from 13% in 2011. But the industry isn't hiring just anybody. Entry-level construction workers aren't what many firms are looking for. You have to have experience and, of course, know what you're doing. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Susanna Palmer. This is Bloomberg.
This is the business of sports.
We're in a situation that we haven't dealt with in modern times.
The pandemic here has really accelerated the investments that we've been advocating for years.
From a macro standpoint, I think our sport industry is really forced to look at the business a little bit differently.
In-depth conversations with the leaders in the sports industry.
Who wants to be the sacrificial lambs that shows up at the first big major sporting event?
We're part of something much bigger than sport right now, and the health and safety of our stakeholders is what's most important.
Every moment, I think we're all, from a business perspective, thinking about the impact that the virus is having across the country.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Kelly.
And I'm Mike Lynch.
And I'm Michael Barr. Over the next hour, we will explore the big money issues in the world of sports and talk to some of the biggest players in the industry.
I'm so excited about this show, guys, because we've got sort of a kindred spirit. Rich Kleiman coming up with us. This guy knows the business of sports from all angles, even has his own competitive podcast. So we'll get into that and much more. But let's talk about what's been going on. A big week in the business of sports for sure. And one thing we're certain to talk with Rich Kleiman about, given his relationship with Kevin Durant, is Katie getting a new teammate, guys. James Harden leaving Houston, Lynchy, and coming to New York to the Nets. This is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. Harden has been sort of a tough guy to handle by coaches and by owners of teams, but he's coming now to join a pretty good club. And there's a new big three in the East right now. And, a lot of people, the obvious question is, well, there's only one basketball and there's a lot of guys that want it. But that wasn't a problem for Golden State when Durant played there with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. It wasn't a problem when LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love were in the Cavaliers. It wasn't a problem for Kareem, Magic, and Worthy. And it wasn't a problem for Mikhail Burton Parrish. So will it be a problem for the New Jersey Nets when James Harden arrives? I don't think so.
Well, you know who's going to be a problem for, Michael Barr? The New York Knicks. I mean, if you're a Knicks fan and you are in the Knicks front office right now, you've got to be looking at this and saying, seriously, are you kidding me? The Nets, at least from a hoops perspective, are just running circles around their friends across the room.
Remember when we used to laugh when you said the Nets? That little giggle that you used to get is like, the Nets. Which one is worse, the Nets or Knicks? Now, the Nets, they are a powerhouse. Look out. And it's done something else. It's bringing back big-time buzz in the New York area about basketball. We haven't had that in a long time.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I think you've got a very well-run business in this case, and you've got some name-brand players who are going to generate a lot of revenue for the Nets for themselves in the meantime. And we know, apologies to all of our Boston fans, Lynchy, but New York is kind of the center of the world when it comes to media, finance, and all of that stuff. So, in any case, well, we do know one thing that will be happening at Madison Square Garden. We'll see how well it goes, is the National Hockey League. And we are going to see the puck drop. Different sort of view of it. We caught up with Javier Gutierrez of the Coyotes a couple weeks back. And, a different sort of season, but the NHL, they're getting back to business, Lynchy.
Yep, they are. They're going to play 56 games in 110 days. There are a lot of back-to-back nights, but geographically they put all the divisions together. So the New York Rangers are going to be in the same division with the Islanders and the Bruins and the Capitals and the Penguins and the Buffalo, I think. There's all the teams. So geographically there won't be a lot of travel. And a lot of people are really, really excited because remember when hockey picked up last year, they played in two venues, Toronto and Edmonton, and now they're going to be playing in the cities. Most of the cities are not allowing fans in. Some are, but at least, it just feels a little bit more normal because you're actually playing in the Garden as opposed to playing in Toronto.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes, and I think everyone is especially interested because, the NBA, it is a mess right now. And, we spent so much of the back half of 2020 talking about, the NBA, they're geniuses, they pulled this off, the bubble, no asterisk on this championship, they got it all done, they got it all in. Well, now they're facing a lot of the same issues that baseball and football faced on a professional level. I don't know how this season is going to go, and I dare say if it even is going to be able to limp to the finish, because we're taping this in real time and we're seeing games get postponed and canceled literally as we're doing this on Thursday morning. We don't know what's going to happen here, but something's got to change in terms of the protocols or maybe the enforcement of the protocols. What do you make of it, Bart?
Well, yeah, I mean, this went from the bubble, and I've said what I feel about the bubble. Yes, they're human beings, but yes, the bubble worked.
Right.
But now we've had several games that have been at least postponed, and you can't keep having this. I know that the NBA took a page from the NFL on scheduling the games and having holes where you can slot this back or this, that, whatever. Well, you've had so many games postponed already, this is causing a problem.
It absolutely is, Lynchy. And, I wonder, and I'm lifting this directly from something I heard Bill Simmons talk about on his podcast. It's going to be a real test for Adam Silver, who, gets all these plaudits from the owners and the players about being a great commissioner. But he's going to have to make some tough choices. He may need to find his inner Goodell here and, and really start bringing the hammer down on these guys.
Well, they're trying everything they possibly can. Now I think they're going to put masks on players on the bench when they come out of the game. Originally, it was only the coaches and team personnel. I think they're going to eliminate shoot-arounds in the morning. They're not going to allow players, when someone makes the first of two free throws, all the teammates come in and give them a fist pump. They're going to eliminate that. And the post-game hugs with opponents, that's going to be out. And It's kind of funny. When most people watch tape, they watch the game action. In the NBA office, I know that they're watching what happens during timeouts, what happens pregame, what happens postgame. And it's going to be like the NFL. They're going to come down and maybe just hit someone hard with a fine to send a lesson. And it worked in the NFL.
Up next on the show, we speak with 35 Ventures co-founder Rich Kleiman. That's straight ahead on Bloomberg Business of Sports. You can follow me on Twitter at Big Bar Sports.
And I'm Mike Lynch. You can follow me at Lynchy WCVB.
And follow me, Jason Kelly, at Jason Kelly News. We're here each and every week at this time. Catch our Apple Podcasts in the meantime. That drops on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
Asset. If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to the real-time financial news, data, and analytics that can take your workflow to the next level. Power up at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Facebook and Twitter have now made more decisive moves to try to combat misinformation and calls for violence, but it isn't likely to stop new calls for regulation of big tech. A senior director at Goldman Sachs has an idea: stress tests for big companies.
Let's start with something that we know worked.
Marty Chavez says up till now, tech has reaped all the benefits and the rest of the world the negative side effects of huge growth and maximizing profits. He says this happens with explosive growth in every industry.
It's no different in principle from a company that's making some chemical product and just flushing its waste into a river.
So he thinks the solution would be for the government to do what it did with banks after the financial crisis.
Now, the banks have been restrained by having capital and liquidity requirements. It's sensible.
There were plenty of objections to those requirements, too.
It all seemed almost like science fiction, like such a heavy lift.
He says it would be doable for big tech, too. The firms just have to be made to put money aside for negative outcomes. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, past president Noel Spiegel.
People often ask me why it's important to use JCF for their charitable giving. I tell them that JCF has a profound impact on our community. Thanks to the revenue generated from our funds, JCF makes an annual $2 million grant to UJA Federation of New York and makes grants from our endowment, the Special Gifts Fund. This year, we proudly granted more than $800,000 to support a kosher food pantry at Mid-Island YJCC, Jewish daycare at the Ed Alliance, a renovation at Camp Oakhurst, and an intergenerational Holocaust program at Ramaz. I'd like you to hear about our impact from a past Special Gifts Fund recipient.
Plaza Jewish Community Chapel is most grateful to JCF for supplying seed money to start the organization. Almost 10,000 families have relied on Plaza to provide an affordable yet dignified Jewish funeral.
Let JCF maximize your impact. Visit jcfny.org or call 212-752-8277.
Some business leaders rely on instinct. Others are masters of data. But to understand what they create, you need to think about how they work.
Why did Deutsche Bank decide to do this now?
Bloomberg Markets.
Give us the economics with these vaccines.
With Paul Sweeney and Vonnie Quinn.
Can China afford to be so generous?
We welcome thinkers.
How does that influence your outlook?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you could do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
This is the Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. We're here each and every week at the same time talking to the biggest names in sports. I'm Jason Kelly along with Mike Lynch, Michael Barr. Today, totally psyched to be speaking with Rich Kleiman. He is the co-founder of 35 Ventures, a guy I've gotten to know a bit. I certainly listen to his pod all the time, read what he's doing on the boardroom. So, Rich, really nice to have you with us, and very timely to have you with us because, wow, it has been quite a week in the NBA. Even we're taping this on a Thursday morning. Even the last 24 hours have been nuts right here in our backyard and with the Nets. Tell us what's going on.
You know, I get to get as close a view to what goes on behind the scenes in the NBA without being an agent and without being an NBA exec. I mean, I'm managed Kevin, so I get to see all of this, and the excitement of it is really incredible. And listen, it's the NBA is now like no trade. I think really shocks fans. I think fans around the league were really in disbelief at what just went down, even though it was rumored for so long.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought it was just talk, and this was okay. That's nice. Gives the sports world something to talk about, and all of a sudden, bam! It happens, and now the Nets are this super team. I'm just wondering, do you think that they're the team now that's going to win it all?
Well, I mean, listen, I work with one player in the NBA, so I'm always going to be biased and think that the team that KD is on is going to win. And, and they got three of the best players in the NBA. And we've seen that in the playoffs, like having superstar players that can get a bucket whenever they need to, especially two of them that have won a championship, one of them that's played in conference finals. They look great. But I also know from watching the NBA so closely that there's a lot of things that come into play, and it's still brand new. So, I guess the way you got to say the safe way is to say that the champ is always still the favorite, right, to the Lakers. But obviously I'm biased, so I feel good about the Nets and the move they made. But it's still a long season, and also this year is so odd. I'm looking at the ticker as we speak, and it's just so it's scary at times to see what's come of. Obviously our whole world, but when you see the ticker at the bottom of SportsCenter just kind of talking about the games that are postponed, man, there's just so many variables to do anything but just play, play one game at a time. And I think for Kevin especially, after missing so much basketball, obviously he's excited and I think he feels good about his team, but he really is just enjoying being back on the court. And that's the best mindset to have right now, especially with what's going on.
Rich, it's Mike Lynch up here in Boston. Obviously, we're not very happy that James Harden is coming to the East. We got rid of LeBron, we got rid of Kyrie Leonard, we sent them out west, and now here comes Durant, and here comes Harden, and one more obstacle to get to the NBA Finals. Knowing Kevin the way you know him, he went to Golden State, and everyone says, well, there's only one basketball for Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant. The same questions are going to arise with the Nets. Do you foresee any issues at all in terms of three big personalities and just stars sharing one basketball?
I mean, everything is just like in business. There's obviously going to be a lot of people having to understand what each person needs. Some James and Kevin have played together, but it's been a lot of years. And there's other players involved. We have a new coach who, was perfect for this situation. It was perfect to manage, the different players involved. But no, because, these kind of things these days, when these three guys and any of these superstars, when they join up, you have to understand that, it's done with thought. It's done with, them understanding that, yeah, of course I can go into a situation and change the kind of player I am. That's why they're so good.
Rich, one of the reasons I love talking to you is you do approach this from a business perspective. And so I want to ask you, as you look at the Nets as a franchise and you look at these players as brands, what does this do for KD? What does this do for the sort of the brand of the Nets, as it is clearly ascendant? I mean, you're a New York guy. I mean, you have seen up close and personal, this team and this brand sort of eclipse that other team that plays across the river.
Yeah, well, no, I don't, again, if I make the analogy as it relates to business, there is never one person in a space that completely monopolizes it. There are monopolies, but there's always others. And I don't whether they've eclipsed them or not. I think it's the Knicks haven't come down in popularity. So it's just that the Nets have risen in popularity, and the Mets and the Yankees, for instance, like the Yankees are clearly the legendary historic team in New York, and they've won so much more than the Mets have. But the Mets are not a bad franchise, and Met fans love the Mets. And then now it's a different story because now my boy Steve Cohen is there, and the Mets may actually take over the Yankees. But my point is that I think the Nets now are a different, unique, incredible big brand, and they're actually like a global brand, which they never were before. But in New York, it's not like, goodbye, Knicks, here's this big Nets band. It's just like, here's two monster brands based in New York.
When we talk about basketball, the state of it in general, where do you see it going now? Because there have been problems with the league and COVID outbreaks. Last season, it worked fine in the bubble. But this season, there have been numerous postponements. Where do you see the future of this season go?
Well, I only know what I hope. I hope that obviously the NBA has the ability to withstand and continue to fight through, because even with what you saw in baseball and football, there is a little bit of a leveling off. Baseball at the beginning, I think we all thought there was no way it would end. Football somehow has pulled it off, and the NBA was seamless in how they put the bubble together. This is a new animal. There's also this new strain of the virus right when the NBA is starting. And everyone knows, at least from what has been reported, that strain is more contagious. Doesn't mean it's more lethal in any way. And I think that you have the healthiest athletes in the world. And while there may unfortunately be postponements and players missing, that's the variable like that we were talking about. Not an asterisk, it's a variable, because it just becomes a hurdle. And you have to adjust. And I hope that, this is what we're all having to do right now, is just adjust. Like, we're on a podcast right now. We're on a show. You guys have to keep working. And I think that they're going to find a way to continue on. I think that's exactly what happened. And, hopefully with a new administration and a new level of calm in our country and a new, priority being put across the board to the pandemic first and foremost over politics and elections and stuff, I think it can only go up, and it can only get better. Yes, cases may go up in the short term, and we have to be cognizant of that. But you can't. I don't think they shut the NBA down.
All right, stay tuned for more of our conversation. We are just getting started with 35 Ventures co-founder, impresario, entrepreneur, Rich Kleiman. That's straight ahead on Bloomberg Business of Sports. I'm Jason Kelly. Find me on Twitter at Jason Kelly News.
And I'm Mike Lynch. You can follow me at LynchyWCVB.
And I'm Michael Barr on Twitter at Big Bar Sports. And download the show to hear even more of this interview, our extended version. Catch that wherever you get your podcasts.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
The following is a message from PGIM.
Welcome to OutSea in 60, Perspectives from PGIM Thought Leaders. Here's Lisa Davis, Impact Investing Portfolio Manager at PGIM Real Estate.
I think we used to believe in ESG circles that climate change was the great systemic risk to financial markets that we needed to find a way to account for. And the challenge was to connect the individual investments that we were making to addressing climate risk at a systemic level. I think the challenge now that I see is that inequality around the globe is an equally important systemic risk, often connected to climate risk, that we have to address in financial markets.
Hear more PGIM perspectives at pgim.com. That's PGIM.com. Partner with PGIM, the investment management business of Prudential. These statements are not intended to be investment advice and should not be used as the basis for any investment decision.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report, sponsored by Merrill. The preliminary climate data on 2020 has been confirmed. Last year ended in a statistical tie with 2016 as the hottest year on record. Some research centers showed 2020 to be slightly cooler than 2016, but it was within the uncertainty window. There is no ambiguity over the fact that the decade that ended with 2020 was the hottest in recorded history. Temperatures were higher than any other period in at least 2 millennia, possibly much longer. The main culprit behind the warming is atmospheric carbon dioxide. It has reached a level not seen in at least 3 million years. 2020 was about 1.2 degrees Celsius hotter than the 19th century, and a NOAA scientist says some regions are warming faster than the global average. She says 1 degree may sound small, but a small change in the global temperature average can lead to big changes when it comes to extreme weather, and we're already seeing that. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
How are financial services firms managing in this new reality? Claire Santaniello, Managing Director at BNY Mellon's Pershing, explains.
If the current times have taught us anything, it's the critical role that technology plays in client relationships. Global conditions have created a business imperative for firms to digitally transform the way they meet client needs and the way they work. Pershing's industry-leading technology enables you to adapt to the evolving ways your clients want to do business, now and in the future, and can help you build an even stronger digital client experience in a simpler, smarter, and safer environment. We have worked with clients of every size to transform their business. Pershing gives you the foundation to stand on, plus our unique perspective, to help you run your business even during the most uncertain of times. We help you consider everything.
To learn more about how Pershing can help you transform your business, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Whether you're working downtown or down the hall, you still need to show up prepared.
We're seeing a green wave as far as equities go.
Bloomberg Daybreak with Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
The head of the effort is already laying plans for the next round of doses.
U.S. relations with China could take a twist.
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
How close was Tesla to being part of the Apple empire?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Here's the latest news. More than 2 million people worldwide have died from the coronavirus. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University confirmed the death toll Friday. COVID-19 is the 9th most fatal pandemic in history. At least 40 million people died during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. Up to 25,000 National Guard troops are headed to D.C. ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration on Wednesday. Pentagon officials are beefing up security following the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. A Guard spokesman said their mission will be to support federal law enforcement and protect the nation's capital. The Secret Service is in charge of security preparations. The Mega Millions jackpot continues to roll. No one matched all 6 numbers in last night's drawing, so the jackpot soars to an estimated $850 million for Tuesday night's drawing. Tonight's Powerball jackpot is worth an estimated $640 million. That's the latest. I'm Lisa Taylor.
And I'm Susanna Palmer in the Bloomberg Newsroom. The New York City Police Department enacted new disciplinary rules yesterday that call for terminating police officers found to use racial profiling or excessive deadly force. The new rules also lay out clear punishment for other offenses. New York City property values, well, they're set to decline 5.2% from the current fiscal year, the biggest decline since the early 1990s. Are from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
It highlights the toll the pandemic has taken on the city's commercial and residential property values. According to a tentative assessment roll released by the Department of Finance, the city has set a value of $1.3 trillion for its more than 1 million properties for the fiscal year beginning in July. Real estate taxes are the largest contributor to New York City's revenue and the primary source of funds that back its approximately $40 billion of outstanding general obligation bonds. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
Apple has begun early work on an iPhone with a foldable screen, a potential rival to similar devices from Samsung and others. All that according to a person familiar with the work who asked not to be identified, discussing private matters. Wall Street dropped again Friday to close out its first losing week in 3, this after reports showing the pandemic is deepening the hole for the economy as Washington prepares to throw it another lifeline. Dan Morris, chief market strategist at BNP Paribas Asset Management, says the pandemic remains the biggest risk to gains on Wall Street.
And unfortunately, we have plenty of distressing news there. So at some point, if it accumulates sufficiently to the point where people start to rethink their forecasts either for earnings or for GDP, that could be something that would likely cause things to turn around at least briefly.
The S&P 500 fell 1.5% this week. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Susanna Palmer. This is Bloomberg.
This is the Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. We're here each and every week for you at the same time, talking the biggest names in sports. I'm Jason Kelly, along with Mike Lynch and Mike Barr. Let's get back to our conversation with 35 Ventures co-founder Rich Kleiman. And Rich, I feel like we came in hot with you talking about all the news of the day. Let's take a beat if we can. Remind us what 35 Ventures is, because the ambition, it feels like, has really just continued to accelerate. Tell us where you are at this moment with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I think 35 Ventures has become the holdings company for, Kevin and my ambitions. And that's, to do a multitude of things in the venture space, in the media space, in the brand space. And we've continued to do so. We've really amplified the Boardroom brand and added multiple verticals and really putting a bigger push behind that this year. And we've had a handful of sponsors that have, invested into it. And then we've continued to work on our full-length docs. We have a scripted series at Apple that should release this year. Our foundation and the Durant Center in Peachey County are continuing to be a focus. So, I think things will, throughout years, will be fluid, and things that become the focus of our attention, like the Philadelphia Union, and that's the MLS team that we invested in. I think at some points throughout the year that becomes very top of mind, but it is really, a holdings company for our ambitions, and I think that we've created this incredible like-minded group of people to help us bring that to life and to collaborate with us. So, we intend on staying relatively nimble, but some verticals of our business are growing where we're hiring people dedicated to that, and, we'll keep building and doing this as long as we can.
Take us back to the beginning, if you can, with the old black and white photos and how this whole thing started. Can you tell us how it began?
Well, I was fortunately born to color photos, and
I wish I could say that.
This is the part of the show, Rich, where Barr always shows he outs himself as a geezer by his own admission. But go on.
Well, I can't listen. I couldn't go up for that ride with you, man. I'm 44, for at least like another 6 or 10 years, maybe I at least pretend that there's some youth in there. But I grew up in New York City. I'm an avid sports fan. I couldn't really function and focus in school, so it wasn't for me. I tried my hand at different entrepreneurial things that were never going to lead me anywhere. But I had a great network of people. I always kept in touch with a handful of people I grew up with, and I went out of my way to meet people that were in successful positions. And when I got asked to help a friend of mine with an internet company, a .com company, at 22, after not finishing college and really messing around, I helped them raise money. We helped bring it to life. And at that point, I feel like I had really gotten my education. And right after that is when I kind of started my career. And I worked in TV. I worked in music. I managed artists. I worked for Jay-Z. I produced films. And ultimately, I wanted to get back into sports. And when I did at Rock Nation, I was able to bring like all of that experience that I had and all of my multitude of jobs and all within the entertainment business. And when I moved over to sports, it was like my childhood knowledge that I really always followed sports. Like it was my business. And then my real kind of lessons and experiences I had learned and the network I had learned building in the entertainment business really combined and really put me in a great position at 35 to just be in the sports world. And I met KD, and I was his agent and manager at Rock Nation for a while, a handful of other athletes and artists, but ultimately I wanted my own business. And, you know, and that's a tough thing for any entrepreneur when you're working for a great organization is, you know, how scary it is to go off on your own. And I had kids at that point. So, you know, Kevin believed in me. And so, you know, about 5 years ago, we joined forces and started building 35 Ventures. So that's, you know, that's the quick story.
Rich, you've got Kevin in New York now, so geographically you guys are close. But now that the season is underway, what is his involvement in 35 Ventures during the regular season?
Well, I mean, we built the company for Kevin to always be the forefront behind everything we do, but not necessarily have to ever be the face unless it was appropriate or something he wanted to do or build. And you know, when he was in the Bay, I spent a lot of time in the Bay and was able to build a network there. In New York, obviously I already had one, but when Kevin got here last year, a whole handful of new people, you know, started approaching themselves and coming to the table with cool opportunities. And, you know, Kevin is one of those people that he doesn't check out from life when the season's going on. It's just like anyone that's, you know, has their job. It's about balance, and we understand that here. And where it's needed, he'll hop on calls, stop by the office. You know, me and him talk every day, so I share things in like real time. So it's really more about, you know, how great his memory is, and he stays in touch with everything happening. And, you know, just his point of view at times, just his perspective is really helpful. And then, you know, like with his podcast, when he goes deeper on something, then he's all in, even if it's during the season, you know, because he can really manage both very well.
Well, stay tuned for more of our conversation with 35 Ventures co-founder Rich Kleiman. Lots more to talk to him about in this upside-down year when it comes to business and sports. Another upside-down year, yeah. That's straight ahead on Bloomberg Business of Sports. I'm Jason Kelly. Find me on Twitter at Jason Kelly News.
And I'm Mike Lynch. You can follow me at LynchyWCVB.
And I'm Michael Barr on Twitter at Big Bar Sports. Download the show to hear even more of this interview, our extended version. Catch that wherever you get your podcasts.
In times,
the world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg Terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at bloomberg.com/professional.
like these, experience, curiosity, and forward thinking
That's where people are going.
are the qualities that will see you through.
It will be a huge share dump.
Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenevec.
This is all about travel.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern.
The Slack acquisition will offer a multiplier effect.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
They actually have fared much better during the pandemic.
Or watch us on YouTube by searching Bloomberg Global News.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Streaming services that signed up a lot of new subscribers since the pandemic began are rolling out new content to retain those subscribers.
Disney and Pixar's Soul, streaming on Disney+.
HBO Plus started streaming Wonder Woman 1984 on Christmas Day.
Your time will come, Diana.
And a new Netflix show, Bridgerton, is a huge hit. Now Discovery Channel thinks there's room for at least one more major streaming service. It launched Discovery Plus this month with an appeal to people who already have streaming subscriptions.
If you have Disney, you're going to want us as a companion. If you have Netflix and Disney, you're going to want us. If you have HBO and Disney, you're going to want us because we're different.
Discovery CEO David Zaslav says one big difference is that Discovery Plus doesn't rely on scripted shows. And he thinks the timing of the launch is helpful.
Disney has been really successful globally. So has Netflix. But people have watched a lot of the content on there.
Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seizechange.
When unprecedented events are unfolding,
do you think it's a different world for the Fed today?
It's important to let history teach us.
Everyone could participate in a unified approach to getting ahead of this pandemic.
And experience guide us.
Is there some parallel with that?
Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston.
As an economist, does that make sense?
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Well, how's that affected Facebook, if at all?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our #1 priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
When we say Bloomberg brings you the latest financial and business news anywhere, we've actually given the matter quite a bit of thought.
Let's get now to our guest joining us from Bangkok.
She joins us on the phone from the Hudson Valley.
Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. World markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
Here's the latest news. More than 2 million people worldwide have died from the coronavirus. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University confirmed the death toll Friday. COVID-19 is the 9th most fatal pandemic in history. At least 40 million people died during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. Up to 25,000 National Guard troops are headed to D.C. ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration on Wednesday. Pentagon officials are beefing up security following the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. A Guard spokesman said their mission will be to support federal law enforcement and protect the nation's capital. The secret Secret Service is in charge of security preparations. The Mega Millions jackpot continues to roll. No one matched all 6 numbers in last night's drawing, so the jackpot soars to an estimated $850 million for Tuesday night's drawing. Tonight's Powerball jackpot is worth an estimated $640 million. That's the latest. I'm Lisa Taylor.